14, yes. Meet is then it was later developed. 14 is the original software. Currently, NSE uses Meet. 14 is used by PS, perfectly correct. But that time, 14 was developed by Financial Technology, Jignesh Shah. And that is the reason why overnight became so rich. The online facility was started by you. Here it is used. National Exchange Automatic Trading. Correct. Then basically what led to this NSE overhead was, these are the initiatives, whereas these people always lack. As of now, if you see, the per day volume of BSE roughly touches 2,000 crore, and in NSE it goes to around 12,000 crore in the cash segment. In the cash segment. In the derivative segment, if you see, BSE has around 25,000 crore rupees. That is also because of the incentive scheme. And here it is basically 1,50,000 crore. Every day, average daily turnover. So that clearly shows that is huge difference between the two.
Sir, if NSE is in terms of volume, in terms of trade, in terms of derivative markets, far much more superior exchange than BSE, in comparison, in fact. Then why does India's situation is always reflected more to do with Sensex rather than do with Nifty?
See, it is because of simple reason. The age-old presence, the oldest stock exchange in Asia. Plus, what has happened? BSE has always been seen as a benchmark index. See, we have adopted Sensex. Sensex started in 1979. First. And second, Sensex is a direct, what you can say, version of Dow Jones. Dow Jones also has 30 shares, Sensex also has 30 shares. Their entire model of working has been replicated from there. Plus, Sensex, BSE has been always basically what you can say, close to government, and it is more or less related to a sentiment. See, when we see stock market, what comes to our mind? That big building along with a bull. Yes, that is basically something like this. See, today any international delegation which comes to India, normally 4 places they visit. It is by default in their itinerary. One is BSE, one is NSE, one is RBI, and one is SEBI. Typically these 4 will be there. In this sometimes happens that RBI may be there, may not be there, but predominantly these 2 will be 110% there.
After NCSL came with SX40.
Yes, SX40. See, it is, MCX has also started an equity exchange. What it says, MCX SX40, that is both index what they had for. But just to tell you that entire MCX has gone for a toss because of NSCL matter. NSCL, I think you must have heard what has happened. NSCL is National Spot Exchange Limited. It is a company that was floated in the year 2006. It is basically a private limited company, but having the name word exchange in it. So when they floated in 2006, in 2007, this company was able to obtain a notification from government, written notification, that it does not fall under any regulatory framework. That means neither SEBI nor FMC, Forward Market Commission, which regulates commodities market, nor Ministry of Finance or nor Consumer and Food Affairs could basically regulate its working. Then what these people did, they basically launched something known as a T+30 contract, which was again illegal, not a valid one. We have contracts of only T+2 settlement cycle basically, or T+10 at the most. These people launched something known as T+30. In this, what was the product? You go to a broker, it was related to only commodities. You say, I buy a sugar contract at say 100 rupees. What broker will do? He will punch a trade for 100 rupees, a buy transaction, and very next moment, after a few minutes, it will put a sell transaction worth 120 rupees. That means you are locking your profit at the very time putting the transaction. Now, who will pay this difference, and then you will get this money after 30 days. But now the logical question was, which the investor should have asked, that if I am getting a guaranteed interest, then they call it as a guaranteed interest product, which was again a Ponzi scheme. That if I am getting 14% rate of interest, who is the person below the computer terminal, behind the screen, who is offering this? But somehow in India or say various parts of the world, so here what they launched something known as a T+30 mechanism which they had launched. Now here when they launched T+30, people invested heavily into this because their return was coming to around 16%. But one needs to understand that if one is getting 16%, who are the companies? There were 24 borrowers actually who were borrowing this money, and they were all private limited companies initially claiming that we have deposited 6,200 crore rupees worth of commodities in the exchange warehouse, in the commodity warehouses. But when the forensic department conducted a raid, hardly any commodities were found. So because of this entire scam, it is 13,000 investors' money has been blocked. 13,000 investors' money has been blocked, and the total quantum of scam is 5,500 crore rupees. Rupees 5,500 crore has been completely trapped. Even currently, just 5 days back, an order has been passed by Indian government that the properties of Vignesh Shah, Joseph Messi and others have been attached. But still, how much amount will be recovered, nobody knows. So this has basically created a major problem. So MCX had come with a big bag that we will beat BSE and this in the equity segment, but that exchange itself has not been able to take off and totally they are at the risk. So this was what NSE. The NSE friend, you have to always understand one thing. This is a clear-cut episode that teaches us what? That some abnormal return, if a product is talking of abnormal return, you always check it out the validity, the credit risk in that product. See, you cannot have something 14%, 16% without any risk. And one has to use a common sense that how can you have a guaranteed interest on something which is volatile? See, if I agree to pay you say 100 rupees pocket money every day, the first thing is that my own income should be guaranteed. Then I can guarantee something to someone. Here, when the original product itself is volatile like this, how can they offer the 16% return? But people send up basically retail investors, they easily get trapped to such offers, and ultimately this is the result. So that hard-earned money has got blocked into this. So this was another clear-cut case which has tarnished our image. Why? Because this is a failure of an exchange. Here also we discussed, I just share about SGF, Settlement Guarantee Fund. Initially it was said that the Settlement Guarantee Fund was of 840 crore rupees by the CEO on a given day. Within 24 hours, he again appeared on the national channel and says, no, this fund is only 50 crores. And the third day say it is only 50 lakhs. So actually there was no fund. There was no fund properly created by the exchange right from day one. So this basically shows that there was complete regulatory vacuum, and what we can say is basically a scam of a Ponzi scheme launched by the promoters of this exchange. Clear?
Yes.
Suppose another investor, like say 100 crore rupees, if you are an investor, you want to invest in these businesses, you will be looking for say blue company. So what parameters will you look at? I cannot buy all the people. I want to buy a couple of them. So what will be the basic parameters that we will consider by investing?
Okay. Basically, for questionable fundamental analysis. See, whenever you want to buy any company, it will be very frank, I want a very simple principle which I try to share with you. I don't go by very big models or this thing, because ultimately no model works in real market, to be very frank. See, whether you take back school model, whether you take cost of carry model, or any other model, this other model, dividend policy model and all this, these all work for paper only. In market they don't work. Why? Because in market only sentiment works. So it is ultimately something between demand and supply. See, whenever I tell you a very simple example I give. Tata Steel, a company everybody knows. Yes, this is India's best company, world's third largest steel producing company. 3 months back, the stock was at 475. It's just a low of 202. Now it is at 375. What does this mean? Does it mean that the balance sheet contracted by 50% and again expanded by 50%? No. Nothing has happened to the balance sheet, nothing has happened to the operations. Why the price then comes down? See, price which you see on the stock market terminal is a function of demand and supply. Demand supply, when I say, it means that every second how many number of buyers are there in the market and how many numbers of sellers are there in the market. If the number of buyers are greater than the number of sellers, the price has to go up. And if the number of sellers are more in the market, then the price has to come down. That means price may not reflect the true fundamentals of the company. It only reflects the temporary sentiment or the demand supply situation which is prevailing in the market. It basically resembles that. Clear? It only resembles that particular point. Now if I tell you what are the important factors, even though you have to check out when you are physically buying a stock, then most important one is your EPS. That is earnings per share. Why earnings per share? Because ultimately even when FIIs select a country for investment, they will go by what percentage is the EPS of the index going to rise. Because EPS is what? Net profit divided by total number of shares. So in a way, it is an acid test of the company whether EPS is rising or not. This is something very basic but very vital. Then, after the global financial crisis and other things, net equity ratio has become the order of the day. A very simple mechanism. You have to simply check what is the borrowed capital in the balance sheet of the company. If the borrowed capital is more, that company will always face a difficult times, a hard music whenever economy slows down. There have been real life examples like DLF. DLF has a debt of 23,000 crore rupees on its balance sheet. 23,000 crore. The total debt of Indian real estate industry is around 50,000 crore. So that means one company accounting for 45% of the debt. So that is clearly that the stock is never going to perform. It's simple common sense. Because whatever they earn, it will go for repaying their debt only. So how will your EPS go up? Unless EPS goes up, why will FII buy your stock? See, ultimately, even for fundamentally good company, buying has to come. And when will buying come? If the net profit goes up. That is the what we can say acid test for any company. Clear? So debt equity ratio should be as low. Kingfisher, again a clear-cut example. 7,000 crore rupees borrowed, now we are unable to repay. The stock has gone down to 4 rupees. Suzlon, 12,000 crore rupees debt, 3,000 crore rupees cash on hand. So 9,000 crore rupees the company has a pure debt. So these are the things which basically clearly show that this ratio has to be on the lower side. Third, we need to take current ratio. That is why very vital. It shows the liquidity aspect in a company, the short-term payment capacity of the company, whether the company has enough cash or not. Liquidity ratio is what? Current asset upon current liability. Here also, if I give you a real life example, you must have heard about Subriksha chain of stores. Subriksha chain was started by IIM graduate only. The store expanded very well, everything was fine. But a time came when they had inventory worth crores of rupees, inventory, but no money in the bank account to pay salaries. So what is the use of that inventory? The same thing with Wockhardt Hospital. The market cap of that company was 900 crore, the debt was 3,600 crore. So again, basically, no money to pay salary to their doctors and full-time nurses. Then they had to sell their property in Bandra complex and they restructured the entire balance sheet. So that means what? Having assets is not enough. You should have cash on hand. See, why Infosys is expected 18,000 crore rupees cash on hand. Reliance 85,000 crore rupees cash on hand. So this basically ensures that the company will not have any difficult times.
But cash on hand, sometimes it is like it can work in a negative way also. Right?
Yes. See, it has both. Basically, too much cash on hand means what? The company is not utilizing the opportunities available in the market. That is one. But another point is that having cash does not mean that it has to be necessarily utilized only. See, when Narayan Murthy was asked the question that in spite of having so much cash, why does Infosys does not aggressively go for buying out of small companies? So what he said, we buy a company only when we feel that the culture gels with our culture. So having cash does not mean that you necessarily go and buy something. Otherwise what happens? That is again destruction in shareholders' wealth. There again there will be destruction. So it is a call which has to be taken very judiciously and it goes on either way. Then basically, apart from these basic few things, operating cash flow is very vital. Operating cash flow. That means whether your operations, basic operations of the company are generating cash or not. I see these 4-5 items only when I buy a stock. Whether operations are generating cash. Example, your college, IIT Ghaziabad Dubai campus. What is its key operation? Key operation is to provide quality education. Clear? So if this business is not doing well, then even if the ancillary activities are good, say for example canteen is good or other recreation facilities are good, you are doing lot of tools, that will not give any result. Because ultimately what is your core operation? Core operation is teaching. Similarly Tata Steel core operation is what? To produce steel, exactly. So the steel business has to generate income. Cash flow has to come from that core activity. So that is something very, very crucial. And most importantly, which I look at is the last one, that is a qualitative one, that is corporate governance. What do you mean by the term corporate governance? Corporate governance simply means to what extent is the management ethical, transparent and works in the interest of the shareholders. That is very, very vital. For example, Satyam fiasco, Enron, WorldCom, these are the clear cases where the top management defaulted, not any employee. See, these are all cases where once these companies were very sound, but today they are either liquidated or on the verge of bankruptcy. Why? Because the management itself was unethical. The management itself was not ethical enough. So one has to keep this point in mind that corporate governance is very vital. In India, what we have done is that in the SEBI, in clause 49 of listing agreement, has made it compulsory that if the chairman is executive, 50% of the board of directors will be independent. And if the chairman is not executive, 33% of the board of directors will be independent. What is the purpose behind this? The independent director has to have a whistleblowing policy. He has to immediately alert SEBI that this particular thing, wrongdoing is taking place in the organization, kindly take a note of it and take appropriate action. And this is something very, very vital. See, today why do we invest in Infosys? It is because of Narayana Murthy's integrity. Why do we respect Tata? Why Reliance has lost its confidence? So corporate governance is very, very crucial matter when it comes to investing in a company. And how do you track this? See, even when you are a shareholder, every 3 months when results are declared, you will get annual report and balance sheets. So what you need to check out is director's speech. You have to read word by word what is directors telling. And whatever they say, are they implementing? That is very vital. If you find the directors are not implementing but making big promises, they say that we are going for solid inorganic growth. That is, we will acquire a lot of companies. But this statement is just coming, but no actual acquisition is being done. That means these are all statements to bluff the market. They say that we are basically acquiring a company which will grow, but ultimately nothing takes place. So these are the facts which one has to look out. So corporate governance is one very, very important aspect that one has to check it out. So these are some of the things which typically I look when I basically buy a stock. Very simple one. Apart from what just the very simple thing I will tell you is a shareholding pattern. That is very important for the sense that in any company where institutional holding is rising, FII mutual funds are accumulating the stock, that means that stock has long-term potential. Because FII mutual funds, they never buy a stock from newspaper report. No, they always meet the top management one-on-one and then they decide to buy or not. So that is something very, very vital. In any stock where promoter is diluting the stake, you will always see that company is risky for investment. Because that clearly shows that promoter is not interested in running his own company and so he is exiting the company. So this is something that these all data, whatever I have told, this all data is very easily available on NSEindia.com, BSEindia.com, or if you go to kotaksecurities.com. These are the normal sites where you get all listed companies, all 5,000 companies, last 5 years, 7 years data available at your fingertips without any cost.
So, like recently, we came up with this order that the shareholding of promoters should not exceed 75%.
Now it has come.
So, I mean, why would they come up with something like that?
Very next question. See, why they have come up like that? See, what they want is that basically to twist it other way, they simply want that the public holding should be 25%, not promoter holding should be minimum 25%. Why? Because see, what I just said, that here, which are these companies, the remaining 2,500 companies which are less active, these are those companies where public holding is hardly 1%, 2%. See, when you manipulate a stock, always remember basic rule when you deal in capital market, you should never buy a share where the average trading volume is less, because that is very easily susceptible to manipulation. Any stock, if you can check out, there was a stock known as Gandhinagar Hotel. Hardly any trade used to take place. From 40 rupees it was taken to 300 rupees and it was back to around 1 rupee, 2 rupees. Then SPS Resources, 40 rupees it went to 340 rupees, back to 10 rupees. So these are clearly, if you see the shareholding pattern, the basic point is that the public float will be very less. So when the public float is less, it is easy to manipulate a stock. So what SEBI and these people want, that if the public holding is high, then it is difficult. And basically that is why promoters have to dilute their share. Clear? So that is the basic logic after this. And this was mandated 3 times the deadline was extended. But now SEBI is very strict that the public holding should be 25% in a company.
Insider trading policy recently.
Yes.
Any US level policy. How it will be exactly correct?
See, what is insider trading? Insider trading means that by the virtue of your designation, you have an access to some information which others are not knowing and you use that information for your personal gain. That is insider trading. In insider trading, so far as in India, we do not have, to very frank, any major mechanism to catch it. Because till now, the phone tapping was not within the power of SEBI. The search and seizure was also not within the power of SEBI. We take a very classic case of this Rajat Gupta in USA, Rajat Gupta and Rajat Ram. This entire case was of insider trading, whereby Rajat Gupta had leaked some information with Rajat Ram that they were going to acquire a company, the other bought the shares, and in one single day, when the actual acquisition was announced, they made a profit of $18 billion. Now this entire case came out because SEC had the power to take the calls and obtain it as evidence. Till now, SEBI did not have it. Recently, it has got this power. So this will make a drastic change in dealing with the insider trading laws. And insider trading has to be stopped. But there also, I give certain real life example. If we take, there was a company Gujarat Economico. In that, the MD itself was found doing insider trading in his own company. He was fined 2 crore rupees by SEBI. Then in Ranbaxy, one of the independent directors had bought lakhs of shares before the IC acquired Ranbaxy. So there also recently, Mr. Paul, he was fined with 60 lakh rupees.
So that means that you can't buy shares of your own company.
You can, but you have to declare it. See, basically there are guidelines for that. Recently, SEBI was just last week, only December 21st, we have to file a reply for that. It has come with this thing, guidelines for research analyst also. That any research analyst, suppose I am recommending a call, so before 5 days, and post 30 days that research report, I should not buy that stock in my account. If I buy, that is insider trading. That is front running. 5 days before I give this research report and 30 days after publishing of that research report, the research analyst should not buy. Because if you buy, then in that particular case, you are doing insider trading. Because you are a private with that information. Here also in this last year, in HDFC Mutual Fund also this has happened. 3 dealers, for example, when the fund manager goes to the dealer and says that you buy 5 lakh shares of say XYZ company, the dealer used to send SMSs to their own this thing, friends and others. Can you buy this stock in your own, in my name to your account or friend's account? So this was caught, and from then onwards, basically CCTV cameras are kept in the dealing rooms or in the institutional trading rooms, and no communication device is allowed to make.
How does SEBI have regulatory authority over Sahara real estate companies as their privately listed?
See, that is a question which is very, very tricky in nature. See, what has actually said Sahara done? See, Sahara says we have collected some 20,000 odd crore rupees from 3 crore investors. That is one. Now, when you collect money from the public, it is under collective investment scheme, and that needs to be registered with SEBI. Clear? Though it is not a listed company, though it is not a listed, it has to be registered that you are collecting money from people. It comes under collective investment scheme guidelines. And what is collective investment scheme? You are informing people about the scheme and taking their money, and you are basically buying the stocks out of it or whatever you invest. In case of Sahara, see, there is very frank, there is an ego hazard between SEBI and Sahara. What has happened in Sahara? Sahara has never complied with any of the earlier regulations of SEBI. And that is the reason that recently SEBI has told Sahara chief that you cannot leave India unless you submit the title deeds of entire 20,000 crore rupees property. Now, to be very frank, when we did some investigation in this, Sahara says we have 3 crore investors, but you just apply one logic. In India, after having independence of 60 years, capital market gaining prominence after 1980, and with so much of efforts done by exchanges this that, the total registered KYC with SEBI is 1 crore 50 lakhs in India. Then how can a private company have an investor base of 3 crore? So that itself is this thing. Second, when investigations were done, what came out was that the list with Sahara is giving that these are the investors, 80% of them are either dead or missing. This is a hard fact, that is what they have done. Or dead people name addresses, they have shown as investors. The actual money belongs to some political party. And the point is that government knows this, but government wants Sahara to take that party's name so that that party can be brought under control. See, it is all political game. Otherwise, there is no problem. There are a lot of companies doing the business. Even today, to be very frank, I visited Assam. I saw Sahara office still operating properly. Just last week. So it is basically in case of Sahara, it is more of an ego battle between finance ministry, SEBI, and Sahara.
Sir, we see that are there any limitations on broking houses like we see that many times they create a false agreement like buy the shares like a short-term profit of their. So as the broking house they might be trading in a higher cost and when they they also tend to buy. So in that way, they are creating something like an artificial demand.
Yes.
So is there any way to regulate this, or is it allowed, or what is this?
See, normally what happens is, first of all, you have to understand what kind of broker is giving the research report. You are telling to an extent that is true. Very good broker, broking houses give this, but not all reports are fake, because here the reputation of the broking house is also a stake. For example, if we take examples like India, Motila Oswal, JM Financial, KR Choksey, these are very reputed firms. So when they give a research report, it is backed by a solid reason. But yes, but if you see small broking houses, which are very small in nature, they typically try to float SMS rather than giving research report. You must be getting SMSs like it's a jackpot call, 10 rupees share, will become 60 rupees within this time frame. Now you have to apply simple common sense that if he is so sure about that stock, why is asking you to buy? Actually that's a trap that he wants to exit, so he wants other to enter. Because stock market is nothing but a double entry system. Debit will be a similar of a credit. If I make a profit, somebody makes a loss. So here SEBI is trying to bring something known as a regulation for intermediaries, but still it is very difficult to structure and design. See, primarily what happens in India, we have been surprised by the figures. We have 1400 registered stockbrokers, 1400, which is a record in itself. I visited various countries. None of the countries have even 50% of this. We have 1400 registered stockbrokers and 77,000 we have stockbrokers. These are stockbrokers. So this basically creates our market is a bit fragmented. Our market is large, fragmented, and very difficult to control. So it takes time, but SEBI is ensuring that no false reports are circulated in the market.
So like there is zero-sum game, like
Yes, to an extent, yes, it's a zero-sum game. Obviously, sir, if I am making a profit, somebody has to make a loss. Otherwise, how will the trade go?
but in long term, does it apply?
Sir, in long, see, it not depends upon whether you are a long-term investor or whether you are a trader. Clear? See, if you are a long-term investor, always see what has been the return since 19. If I just share this data with you, since 1979 till 2012 December. If you see what has been the average return of BSE Sensex itself, it has been 16.25%. That is our CAGR return. CAGR return of 16.25%. What has gold given in this era? Gold has given a return of 11.1%. Bank FD has given a return of 8.8% in this. And the average inflation in India has been 8.1%. Inflation has been 8.1%. So this clearly tells that long-term investment always gives result. See, trading, if you do any intraday future options, they are all ultimately speculative instruments. So there it is very obvious that one will not get the desired result. Rather, the loss will be very high. Here, in derivatives especially, I have seen that those who trade blindly ultimately lose lot of money. It's a fact.
SEBI was introduced like post election, and before that we had a ring. The ring of people used to trade. So can you just tell us like what was the significance of SEBI and the reformation from 1991 to current year?
Okay. See, basically, earlier for more than about 100 years, we had this open outcry system. Open outcry system means what? If you happen to come to BSE, you go to the first floor and there is a convention hall, big convention hall. That was the original trading ring. Original trading ring where people used to go and screen. People, when I say, it was either a broker or broker authorized representative will go and basically screen out. So if you have seen that group film, in that there is one scene, everybody screening in a room. That was actually used to happen in BSE. Then basically in 1998, SEBI was formed as a department, 1998, and then it was given a statutory body power under Securities and Exchange Board of India Act, Parliament, 1992, and then this body was formed. SEBI has done a lot of reforms in the sense if we take 1993, 1992 itself, the first thing it did allowed FIIs to invest in Indian markets. That was in 1992. If you go date-wise, 1992 FIIs were allowed. 1993, private sector mutual funds were allowed to start their operations in India. 1993, 1996, they allowed the formation of depositories. CDSL was formed, NSDL was formed. Depository Act was passed. Then in the year 2000, derivatives market was launched. So these way SEBI has done a lot of reforms over the period, along with the concentration of the government and obviously the finance ministry. implements. The decisions are taken by these people. But here also, to an extent, many times SEBI has got what we can say, SEBI's decision has been effective, or at times SEBI's decision have hurted the market rather benefiting. Example, yes. See, if we take mutual fund industry was thriving, it was going well. What SEBI did? It removed the entry load from investors. Entry load was of 2%, and I explain you how. See, primarily what is a mutual fund? Mutual fund is a product where a small individual investor can also participate and be a part of the mainstream economy. Now, moving on to that person to invest a 5,000 rupees a small application, an agent will go, because mutual fund companies don't have the required manpower to reach to small and rural areas. So in this particular case, what happens? When the entry load was removed, more than 30,000 independent financial advisors got out of the market because their income stopped. The result was investors were not served, and ultimately last 2 years, if you see, 36 lakh folios have been closed down. 36 lakh folios. Why folios closed down? Because investor is not getting service. Number one, there is nobody to guide him. Number two, nobody to go to his door, fill up the application form, bring that form. See, in India, investors need food feeding. They have to spoon feed them. So unless basically a person reaches them, they are not that accept that they nobody return that and do it. See, in major cities it is still fine. But apart from that, it's a big challenge. So penetration, financial inclusion will come how? If you have more number of intermediaries, especially in a market like India. See, here the market may be well matured, educated people are there, but in India still there is a way what we can say disparity. So because of these things, what SEBI did in a hurried manner, just to protect the 2%, it's true, but it has damaged the industry rather than benefiting.
So that leads me to the next question. So like you talk about literacy in India. So then what do you think about courses in capital markets? What is your opinion on that in India? Are they popular? Are they gaining significance? What is the future?
See, basically, if we talk of India, there is a huge attraction towards capital market career, especially career related to stock broking industry, commodities, mutual funds, portfolio management services. In fact, when I go to MBA colleges, more than 70% of the students want to go in research. More than 70%. So it is an area upcoming, there is no doubt in that. But yes, the practical knowledge is lacking. And the courses needs to be designed which are more aligned with the practical exposure rather than the theoretical framework. See, understand one thing, sitting in class and hearing a lecture is different, whereas meeting an investor is different. Because investor will ask you something which is not written in the books. Here, to be very frank, he will ask you that question. For example, he will ask you, "Will my name in the demat certificate and the demat account is different? Will my shares get dematerialized?" So this you will come to know only when you actually send that certificate for dematerialization. Clear? This is not written in the book. So this is small example. This is how you have to basically track it out. From income tax to many times client asks us, hey, in a KYC form, there are only 3 bank accounts. So what typical person will do wants to avoid tax? He will give the check to the broker from the 4th account, not from the account which are mentioned in this. So these things you will learn when you are actually into the business.
So recently announced inflation index bonds.
Yes, see, government what it is trying to do that, so inflation is eating away the real return. So government is trying to bring the concept of inflation index bond. How far it will be successful, we don't know. But the logic of that bond is what? If inflation goes up, the base price of the bond will go up, so your return is adjusted as per the inflation. Clear? For example, 100 rupee, 4% rate of interest you get, and 100 is the index when the bond is launched. Suppose it now becomes inflation becomes 104, so now the 4% return will be calculated on 104. Earlier it was at 100. This is what the normal concept is, but how far this product will become we don't know. Because in India what has happened, the retail debt market is not picking up, it is only the institutional players who work. Retail investors are interested in putting money in FD only. An average Indian attracts 44% of his asset allocation goes into fixed deposit, 28% into insurance, and 22% into LIC, KVP, PPF. Only 3% goes into equity market. So that needs to be developed.
So I have a somewhat different question. Sometimes there are flash crashes due to faulty algorithms in the intraday markets. So is there a body which regulates this, and how do they do it?
Very nice question. So what is algorithm trading? Algorithm trading means what? These are the specialized softwares where you need to enter a query and the software keeps on putting the trade. The algorithm trading world over is gaining popularity, but at the same time it has own disadvantages also because it creates lot of volatility in the market, which is not comfortable for a normal retail investors. We take again a real life example. Recently you must have heard about this MK stock brokers. In India there is a company known as MK stock brokers. It is a big FII firm. What had happened to them? In just 4 months time, one of the dealers had to put a trade of 65 crore rupees worth of sale. By mistake, he put a trade of 650 crore rupees worth of sale. So the moment that trade went into the system, Nifty came down by 18%. 18. Now here there were two glitches. And when the market falls by 10%, it should have stopped. But the risk management system of NSE failed and the market circuit breakers did not apply. So it did not stop at 10%. The market went on falling and it reached 18% level. Now when it reached 80, when it was falling above 10%, lot of algorithm trades got triggered and that accelerated the fall. Why? Because in algorithm what happens, you put a limit. For example, if the Nifty goes down by say 20 points, there will be lot of buying done by the software. If the Nifty goes above say 50 points, there will be lot of selling done by the software in order to move the profits. So this created the fall much more severe. So here SEBI is also studying and consulting with various other regulatory bodies globally what should be done about algorithm trading. But yes, as a matter of fact, it is going to remain because it is one of the latest methods to trade. But here the problem is it does not provide a level playing field between the top and the big brokers who can afford such sophisticated softwares and the small brokers who cannot afford it. So that is a sort of grey area which regulator is trying to address, but yet it does not have a something very concrete answer.
And it is a mix of 4 trading locations, colo-location and the fixed protocol. So they are improving the LC basic at par with NYC.
Yes. See, a lot of money is being spent by exchanges on IT development. For example, recently BSE has tied up with Jewish Board. Jewish Board is Germany Stock Exchange. They are having 5% stake in us. And recently we have launched a product known as Gold Plus, just last week only, whereby on a single screen you can see all products and the speed is also very fast. But even then what happens is when the crash or when the fall comes in the market, the rest of the software also fail. And the circuit filters don't apply at the right time. Because of that what happens is the algo trades get triggered, which again results into more loss or more volatility in the market. That is how the whole problem comes in.
Sir, could you tell us about the future markets and the commodity market, how to trade in them, what to do for trading, or should we trade in them or not?
See, basically, what is in India we have 4 markets where you can trade. Basically, one is the equity market, NSE, BSE, cash, one is the derivatives market, then the commodities market and the currency market. Out of all these, the most volatile is the commodities market. Commodity market, why it is more volatile? Because after 6 o'clock, as per Indian standard time in the evening, international markets open up. So that time the volatility increases to a very, very great extent. And if you see commodities, there are 4 kinds of basically asset classes. One is bullion, gold, silver, then one is metals, aluminium, stock, nickel, copper, all those things. Then agricultural commodities, wheat, sugar, potato, and then last energy, that is energy is crude oil and natural gas. So first of all, you need to understand how these commodities behave. See, as far as gold, silver is concerned, bullion, they always have an inverse relationship with 3 things: macroeconomic data, equity markets, or US dollar. Clear? That means if macroeconomic data is poor, if equity market is not performing, or US dollar is weak, then gold, silver has to go up. For the simple reason, FIIs will withdraw money from equity markets and will put it into gold, silver. Clear? So that is the way in which these commodities will behave. If you talk of metals, metals have a direct correlation with the economic data because if economy expands, the consumption of metal goes up. If economy contracts, consumption of metal comes down. So basically it has direct correlation, which one is to understand. Agri commodities, to be very frank, very difficult to predict because lot of manipulation takes place in agri commodities. The demand supply data comes, but yet it's a matter of, to be very frank, a difficult call to make. And energy and natural gas, whereby crude oil and natural gas, they also go with a positive correlation. That means if world economic data is good, their consumption goes up, so their demand will go up. The reverse is also true. When the world economy slows down, they come down. So here primarily what we need to understand is that if you want to trade, you should be prepared with volatility. These are the commodities, these are the markets where volatility is very high and the margins charged, to be very frank, are relatively less. So because of low margin, clients immediately come into risk. Now, many times we have raised this question with the exchanges, but they say that in order to develop the product, in order to make more people come in, they deliberately charge less margin. In equity derivatives, we have an average margin of 20 to 25%. In commodities, it is 5 to 10% only. So that is one we need to understand before one takes a final call whether to trade or not. See, you have to understand the risk return mechanism. If the risk return mechanism is normal, yes, but if you have that kind of risk appetite, you should go and trade. But if you don't have that kind of risk appetite, you should avoid.
And so what about the future market?
Futures is commodity and equity derivatives. These are the markets which are cash settled. So if you make profit, your account is credited. If you make loss, it is debited. The physical delivery does not take place.
Sir, where can you find this information that investor, Indian 44% of Indian investors investing FDs and
See, basically these are the data which are published as a part of various research reports. So when you keep on reading newspapers, articles, you will find this kind of data.
so what are the key differences between future and option?
Key differences. See, both products are totally different. In future, you have basically margins are charged. You have to, the exchange will charge the margin depending upon volatility. If the volatility is more margin is charged. In case of options, basically, it is your premium only which you need to pay. So there is nothing like margin. Clear. Option is basically in option, your loss is determined the moment you put a trade. Because your maximum loss is the premium which you pay. In future, that is not the case. In future, there could be unlimited income and limited loss also, depending upon what kind of trade you have. So that is the basic difference. Options are for small investors, futures is a leverage product for HNIs, to be very frank. But why brokers basically teach futures to everyone? Because in futures, their brokerage income is more. So that is why that is being advocated. But factually taking, options are far less riskier and better products.
Because the structure of how does a market, say for example, taking delivery of a particular stock in the gas segment, then my trade goes from the broker to the
Okay.
exchange
The
and then
entire
the
structure.
CDS and everything.
Okay. See, normally if you take Indian capital market, the structure is somewhat like this. SEBI is the top regulatory body, then there are exchanges NSE and BSE, and in each exchange has a clearing house. That is, we have NSECL with NSE and BOISL, Bank of India Shareholding Limited with BSE as a clearing house. Then basically, what will the exchange do? Exchange will give membership to brokers. Broker will have client name and other broker will have client name. Now, whenever any client puts a buy trade, say for example, I put a trade, buy 100 villa and sell 800 rupees, what will happen? This trade will go through the broker terminal to the stock exchange. The stock exchange similarly, all this will happen on a real-time basis and on a second-to-second basis. So they will see whose broker has put a trade, this has put a buy trade, who is putting the sell trade at the same price. The moment that trade matches, it becomes an order and it becomes a trade and it gets executed. If there is difference between the price, you are putting the buy price at 100 and seller is at say basically at a higher price, 110, the order will become a pending order and it will go and rest in the exchange terminal. It will not get executed. Once, say for example, on this trade takes place on Monday, we have a T plus 2 settlement cycle. So T plus 2 means on Wednesday, morning 10 o'clock, the broker has to ensure that whatever is his paying obligation, paying means whatever money he owes to pay to the exchange, to deposit it in the exchange account, and whatever shares he has to deposit, because whoever has sold shares from this terminal, the shares needs to be deposited, because somebody, the buyer will be waiting for his stake. So morning this is done at 10 o'clock, which is termed as paying. That means things go paying, things go into the exchange. From afternoon 2 o'clock, payout will start. Payout means those who have basically bought shares will receive their shares and those who have sold their shares will receive their money. So this payout will start taking place from 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And in the evening, this entire thing comes to the broker's account. So the next morning, the third day, if you ask the broker that give me my check, the broker will write a check and give it to you. Clear? Broker will release your payment on the third day. So this is how the entire cycle basically keeps on revolving.
Sir,
What will be the cost of the clearing house and vis-a-vis the depository?
See, depository and clearing house and depository, depository is what? Basically NSDL and CDSL. They ensure that what is the exact amount of shares which to be transferred. They will be managing the shares. And clearing house basically finds out the net obligation. Net obligation means what? Suppose a broker, he has 100 crore buy position, 50 crore sell, so his net is what? Only 50 crores. Clearing corporation always identify the net obligation, not the gross one. Clear?
so you said that when I sell it 100 rupees and my shares are floating, sir, but I sell at the market price.
Yes. So not necessarily the market price, you can fix your price also.
Yes, sir, I can
Yes,
fix the
yes.
price also. But if I sell at the market price, then the trade is done immediately.
Yes, and you get a confirmation. The
Yes.
broker will immediately give you a confirmation, but the settlement will take place after 2 days.
So that means somebody is already there with that price giving the shares.
Yes, but then only your trade will go, otherwise it will not go.
Sir, the difference between intra-trade and
Intraday and delivery bill. Intraday and
intra-trade and short sell.
short sell.
And should we go for it like we
Okay.
go?
See, what is key in the market, you can do 3 kind of things. One is intraday. What do you mean by intraday? You buy at 100 rupees, for example, you buy 100 rupee share, you sell at 102. Your matter is finished. This is intraday. Intraday means what? You do something before the market closes. Intraday. Clear? Then there is something known as delivery base. What do you mean by the term delivery base? Delivery base means what? If you bought something at 100 during the market hours and you do not sell till 3:30, so that means that trade is converted into delivery base and you make the full 100 rupee payment to the broker. The shares get transferred in your demat account. So that is delivery based transaction. Clear? And what is short sell? Short sell means what? Suppose I have a news or I feel that Reliance today will go down because the results are, the opinion poll is not good to compare. I don't have Reliance in my demat account. I don't have any Reliance share. Yet what I will do? I will say sell 100 Reliance at 800 rupees, for example. At 800 rupees, I sell 100 Reliance. That is short selling. Short selling means selling something whereby the stock is not there with you. Clear? Why this is allowed? This you can do before the market closes. Because if the market closes and you have not spared this transaction, these 100 shares you have sold, somebody has bought, so he will ask for his delivery and then it will go for auction. So it is
This type of transaction can fluctuate.
yes, it can fluctuate, but so it is again
There should be a barrier.
no, there is no barrier or ban in this because it is again reflecting the market sentiment. Na? There is nothing wrong in this. But yes, there are certain markets, for example, when there was this economic crisis going on, many markets had banned short sell. India never banned it. India has never banned short sell. But yes, there have been various markets which typically ban short sell if you don't allow you to sell. Because whenever short selling is in a big way, market comes down. Because this indicates that there are more number of sellers in the market. Clear? So here what happens, you sell at 800, suppose, and then you buy the same share at 790. So you are making a profit of 10 rupees. You are making a profit of 10 rupees per share. But this transaction needs to be squared before the market closes. If the market closes at 3:30, then it is assumed that you have delivery of share which you are obliged to pay. Clear?
So what if there are no shares to be sold in market? What if there are no shares to be sold in market?
That is short selling. Short selling means what? If you don't have any shares, yet you are selling them because you feel that that share will go down during the market hours. So you basically sell it. Here, you are not owning any shares, yet you sell because you feel that it will go down.
Suppose a few persons come together, form a partner and do multiple short selling.
Yes, that is
How
what
can you avoid
that
this?
see, basically that is what the SEBI does. SEBI has a surveillance mechanism whereby it has deployed various automated software to identify the pattern of trading and the entities who are trading in that share. For For example, recently in India there was one broker known as Prime Securities. His license has been suspended because that is what it did. Gitanjali Gems, there was a share. From 600 rupees it was brought down to 90 rupees within 10 trading sessions. Clear? So that was a circular trading only where the same set of people were trading in between and they brought the share down. So in that case, SEBI has the automated software, other surveillance mechanism where they identify such pattern and then take a step.
Like there are two type of transaction in stock market, like forward transaction and spot transaction.
There is nothing like forward, it is future and spot. Spot and future. Spot is basically normal our NSE, BSE cash market, whereby you can take delivery of shares, you can give delivery of shares. That is known as the spot market. In futures market, it is a cash settled market. If you make profit, your account is credited. If you make loss, it is debited. There is no physical delivery of shares. Neither you give share nor you take share. Clear? That is basically futures market.
So after the get a message like trading that expiry is on the way. So what do you mean by that message?
See, expiry is on the way means that the market, in futures market, at 3:30 the all transactions on the last Thursday will get expired. That particular contract gets expired. So that is the reason you get that message. Because what will happen at 3:30, if there is an open transaction, automatically it will get expired. In the futures market, no, there is no delivery. Yes. Because what is the profit or loss, it gets adjusted. Yes. Clear? So that is the meaning of that word.
So we have in Dubai, so like here, like there is a lot of your China also. So do we have certain stock here? Do we have certain extremely kind of index which is running on China municipality? Yeah, and should there be
The Sharia index, we were having it in BSE. Sharia index, that was first launched in BSE. Now Standard & Poor's has tied up with the Sharia people. That is Dr. Sharik Nisar. He is the father of Islamic finance in India. He is a very good friend of mine. He had designed that index. He is now working with NSE. And NSE we have launched this. What is Sharia index? It is basically nothing but an index where companies other than those in the business of banking, liquor, casino and pornography. Apart from these stocks, the companies are selected. The logic there, see, it is nothing but based on Islamic concept finance. But over a period, what the statistical data that gentleman has gathered, that Islamic finance stocks have performed far better as compared to other indexes. It is, and in various Western economies also, there have been banks like HSBC and others who have been continuously investing in this kind of products. It is an innovative one, but a friendly product and one can go for that. In India, it is picking up, but the awareness is relatively less. And the problem with that product is that the name, many times many people see the perception that it is only for the Muslim community, but it is nothing like this. Rather, a survey in India showed that maximum number of people other than the Muslim community had invested in that product.
one more thing, sir, Indian debt market is not that developed. So then
It is,
how do you increase the volume?
Indian debt market is highly developed, but it is concentrated with institutional investors. So retail market is not developed. For just last 2 months back, SEBI has given permission to NSE and BSE to launch retail debt market in India. But there also there is a problem because awareness is not there, lack of this thing, brokers' interest. That product needs to be pushed closely to the retail investor. Then it will develop.
That's what I'm asking. How will a broker or how will SEBI
Awareness program. See, basically, the only way by which you can bring more people, new people to the retail investor segment is by creating programs, giving them knowledge. It will take time. See, it's a marathon exercise. We cannot anticipate that today I do the program and tomorrow 100 investors will come. No, it will take time, but that is the only way by which it can be done.
So during, if you do a short sell and before the session expires, like the trading session at 3:30, you don't buy back the stock.
That is what I am telling you. If you go for an auction, see, understand. Here, when you are selling shares, when you have sold 100 shares, somebody has bought it, right? So the person who has bought it will ask for his share. Where is my share? I bought it. Clear? So that will goes for an auction. In auction, there are 3 parties. One is a defaulting member, one is an actual member, and one is a contributing member. So the contributing member will give his shares and he will be paid interest on that by the stock exchange. So that is why when you do short sell, it is very vital that before 3:30 you need to square this up. That is compulsory.
Can you explain the difference between call option and put option?
Call option is put option. Call option simply means if you are bullish about a particular thing, you have to buy a call option. Call option premium, your profit will go up when the underlying price goes up. Put option you will buy when you feel something is bearish or something is going to come down. In put option you will make profit when the underlying price goes down. That is the basic difference. Call refers to bullishness, put refers to bearishness.
Sir, can you explain the concept of stop loss trigger price?
See, what is stop loss? A stop loss is something very important when it comes to trading or especially speculators. See, suppose you buy something at 100 rupees, you have bought something at 100 and you feel that my ability is not to bear loss more than 3 rupees. So what you will do? On 97 rupees stop loss you will keep. That means the moment stock comes down and touches 97, automatically your trade is squared off. Squared off means it gets executed. You are buying at 100, you are selling at 97 and you are making a loss of 3 rupees. That is stop loss. Why stop loss is important? Because if you don't keep a stop loss, your intraday or trading loss will be very high. Clear? Those the people, typically if you analyze those who commit suicide or basically who get bankrupt in stock market, if you analyze their trades, these are typically those people who do not trade with a proper stop loss. They do blind trading and that is always very risky and difficult.
So the stop loss is only the entire trade or after the trade?
No, it is in intraday only because once the market closes, there is nothing like stop loss. All these orders get cancelled. Yes, intraday will make it.
Sir, can you explain the same concept of buying?
Yes, buying also. If you buy a share and if it goes down to say 98 rupees and you don't want to take more loss, so 98 will put a stop loss. Buying also, selling also.
Sir, in intraday trading, the final transaction happens at the end of the day.
No, intraday trading, it will happen before the end of the day. If the day ends, then it becomes a delivery-based transaction.
If I don't have amount in my bank and still I purchase more than that, and
That is not a problem because broker gives you leverage on that. See, understand one thing, if you go to a broker and say deposit 10,000 rupees, right? Typically in intraday transaction you are allowed to trade up to 1 lakh rupees. So 10 times exposure is there. But whatever is the profit or loss, what the broker will try to see that your loss at any point of time should not exceed 10,000 because then that is very risky scenario from broker's perspective.
sir, what if the loss was more than 10,000?
What will happen? Suppose it is a loss of 30,000. So that means the broker is now to collect this 3,000 which is known as a pure debit or a net debit from the client. And here normally what happens is when the loss is more than the original amount, the client ultimately says that now I will not pay the bill. So that creates a problem. Litigation arbitration, why that comes into picture? Because of this seal only, whereby the fall or the loss has exceeded the margin amount.
Sir, all the companies are stopping basically so this all are getting those issues
These companies are a part of index only. See what is Sensex? In Sensex you have 30 companies, right? You have 30 companies in the Sensex. So when Sensex basically comes down by say 300 points, we normally find that the big players in the market also come down because that means on that given day there is some news about the economy which is having a negative impact.
all the companies follow on a particular day.
See,
Every company particular things for another
Because in that depends upon what types of news comes in the market. See, in the market there are two kinds of news. News about the company, news about the economy. Whenever there is a news about the economy, for example, if you take, there was Japanese tsunami. On that day, if you see, markets came down by 500 points. Then our finance minister had to come and tell that, no, we are going to do with that economy, we are safe. So that means there is something known as a systematic risk. What is a systematic risk in the stock market? Systematic risk means any event which brings down the whole stock market is known as systematic risk. For example, announcement of a war or basically recession, depression, poor macroeconomic data, natural calamity. These are the events which basically bring down the entire market. Here, the reverse is also true. Suppose says, today US President says that our economy is improving very well, the things are rosy, then what will happen? All things will come up because that is a sentimental effect. That is what is behavioral finance all about. See, last 20 minutes I just explained you. Markets work on behavior, psychology. Investment and psychology go hand in hand. See, when I will buy something, or human psychology, when I feel that if I invest 10 rupees today, tomorrow I will get 15 rupees for this. Clear? When I will sell, when my belief or my psychology says that today I am getting 10 rupees, let me sell it, tomorrow I will get only 8. Clear? So, behavioral finance plays a very major role in creation of sentiment in the market, in creation of sentiment. See, when macroeconomic data comes and the data says that the world economy is improving, what will happen? That instigates a feeling of buying among institutional investors. So they come to the market, they basically start buying things. And that creates a cycle. So one institutional buyer buys, others also start buying, and then that develops the sentiment, what we call it as a positive sentiment. On the other hand, see, currently if we take example of India, it's a classic case where there is an investment psychology that India should be avoided. Why? Because no major thing is taking place, lot of corruption charges coming up, this, that. But say suppose one major, say Walmart comes to them and says, say everything is good about India and I am investing $100 billion. You will see tomorrow onwards, n number of small investors coming and saying that you will also invest in India. So that is basically this what we can say behavioral finance. That your investment decision is linked with what you perceive. Perception goes to learn in OB. Perception is what? How do you particularly anticipate an event or an economy to perform in the near future? Yeah.
So I have a question specific to the company, SBI. In the year 2008, before the financial crisis, the stock prices were somewhere around 800. And after the financial crisis started falling, now today if you look at it, it's somewhere around 50, 60. What is the problem with being for it?
See, if you take basically the real estate sector as a whole, see, after 2008 crisis, if you check out which sectors were the worst hit and which were the least, the worst sector it was real estate only. Why? For the simple reason, extremely leveraged balance sheets. See, all these companies had excessive debt on their balance sheet, and if we have more debt, obviously you cannot survive. See, why IT sector was the least affected, right? Because in IT sector, the entire investment is in human capital. Clear? It is not in any loans or this thing, fixed assets. So they survive the fall. Whenever you buy a stock, debt equity ratio, that is why it is important. See, DLF was earlier trading at 1200, today it is trading at 120, 130, 140, something like this. Why? Same reason, 25,000 crore rupees, this thing. The second thing, the 5,000 crore debt was that will be taken. SDR was the third biggest debt company with debt of 3,800 crores. So that is the basic reason why these stocks, especially real estate stocks, have never performed.
So there's only 3% of Indian population trading in stock market. So at what extent do you correlate or justify that the stock market is a clear picture of the economic situation of India?
See, to be very frank, I personally believe that stock market is one of the barometers. It is not the sole barometer. For the simple reason, stock market is based on demand supply. This can be manipulated or this can be affected. Let us not use the word manipulated, but this is easily affected. So say I'll give you a simple example. Suppose there is a stock in which the average daily volume takes place is 5,000 shares. Suppose we two get together, we are big brokers, and if we both start punching 10,000 shares order per day, what will happen to the price? It has to go up. There is no rocket science in that. It will go up. From 10 rupees, it will become 50 rupees. So does it mean that the economy is expanded by 5 times? No. So it is one of the barometers, not the sole barometer.
So then what about the rest of the population, like 98% of
Yes,
population?
basically,
Affects demand and supply. Then what is the effect on stock?
then it would be more of a realistic thing. See, currently what has happened in India, we have 1700 FIIs. So foreign institutional investors are controlling our markets. They are owning shares worth more than $200 billion with them, $200 billion. So think of a scenario, even if they are offering the selling of 10%, 20 billion, the market goes for a toss. So that is the reason why we are conducting some various events like this. And thereby more and fresh retail investors like you join the market. That is the only way by which you can deepen the breadth of the market and make it more deep.
So as I said, that the market is depending on demand and supply. So if a person has a lot of money and he buys a company share again and again,
Correct.
so the
Price goes up,
price
yes.
goes up. So he will ultimately make profit or profit.
No, not necessarily. He has to exit at the right time. If he is buying, somebody is selling also, no? Ultimately, see, in stock market, exit is very important, not entry. If you exit at right time, what is exit? What is the return expectation? See, if I am expecting a return of 12%, if I am getting that, I have to exit that, then there is no problem. Exiting is very vital as compared to entering.
So like what factors are the deciding factor for exit?
Exit basically your own return expectation. See, I always say on one thing, that we buy.
My individual expectations can be more than.
Yes, but that is where the problem comes from. See, what happens typically in my last 10 years, what I have seen, that I have went, say, you went 100 investors, 95 will say, I bought a stock at 100, it went to 120, he did not sell, and then it came to 80 rupees. So then he blames the market, I made a loss. But the point is, when it reaches 120, you are making a 20% return in say 15 days, 30 days, 45 days. Why can't you take that? When bank gives you only 9% return in 1 full year, here you are getting something much more than that. You have to take it. And that is where people like Warren Buffett, Franklin Templeton, George Soros, others, they make money. Because they are very clear when to exit. Exiting is very vital.
According to you, what is the ideal state when to exit? What is the ideal percentage?
There is no idea. They depend on what is your risk return expectation. But typically you get 9% in bank. So around 12% if you are getting, that is a reasonable thing. So if you wait for the 30-40%, that's a very risky call you are taking.
So this year the Nobel Prize in Economics was given to 3 scientists who had contrasting views on the information processing ability of stock markets.
Yes.
What in your view is the correct?
See, basically to be very frank, the stock market has always remained asymmetric and it will remain asymmetric throughout the existence of mankind for a simple reason. Whatever you do, there is always some sort of information which is available to some sort of people always ahead of us. So to be very frank, when RBI policy is going to come, just to check it out, before one day, if the RBI is going to cut interest rate, you will find bank nifty going up. Why? Do you mean that markets digest every information? No. It is very clear that some people from ministry is leaking that information. It is as simple as that. So that is going to happen. Why? Because these are the people who are near to the decision making scenario. So this will remain. There is always asymmetry. Markets can never be fully symmetric. If everybody knows everything, then markets will not survive only because then all trades will be in one direction.
So what about the bubble that forms? It's all talked about like bubble forms in the statistics and it breaks down.
Bubbles formed.
Like the sentiment is going positive. Everything is macroeconomic parameters are all positive, but somehow this market comes down even when everything is going positive.
See, that is not basically bubble. That is basically known as correction. See, when markets go up, we take a simple example. Markets are at say 7,000. Market goes to 8,000, right? So there will be some set of people who have bought at 7,000. So these are the people who will try to book profit at 8,000 because at 8,000 also there will be a lot of people who have yet not entered. So they are entering the market at 8,000. Getting it? I bought at 7,000. You are entering at 8,000. So what I will do at 8,000, I will try to sell because I am making a good profit. So that time there is a slight correction. The market comes down. That is not asset bubble. Asset bubble means what? When prices do not justify the fundamentals. When price does not justify the fundamental, that is asset bubble. For example, when Reliance Capital was quoting 2,800 rupees in 2008, that is an asset bubble. Today what it is quoting 170 rupees. So those prices were very highly unjustified prices, where fundamentals are unable to support that kind of pricing. That is. I think.
I would also like to ask you about the company IFCI. This is, I think, one of the oldest financial institutions of India.
Yes.
At the time, it was doing pretty good,
Yes.
but because of various ups and downs and various defaults, I think it's trading now I think on somewhere around 20s. So do you think the company has potential to do good in the future?
See, the problem with IFCI is what? See, normally individual stocks we don't recommend, but in this case, I'll just share with you. In IFCI, the problem is it was doing well, but then it basically had a lot of bad debts, NPAs, some 8,000 crore rupees, and then government told IFCI that you stop lending only. So that killed the stock. Then every time there is a story that IFCI will get a banking license, and so for some time it goes up. Again, the news comes out to be fake, and it again comes down. So that is a stock which is highly dependent on government regulation. So the best thing is to avoid it.
Sir, according to you, what type of portfolio should I usually maintain?
So
What type of
actually,
stock?
see, See, in the portfolio should technically be a diversified one. Diversified one means you have to take stocks from different sectors. You just take stocks. Say for example, the best portfolio will be what? Tata Steel, the biggest company from steel. L&T, biggest company from diversified conglomerate. RIL, biggest from oil and refinery. Maruti. This will make your portfolio diversified plus having companies which are industry leaders in themselves. So this will ensure that over a period of time you are able to make good money. Another reason is that these companies are a part of index. So index cannot go without these stocks going up. Clear? So that point one needs to be put in mind.
Some people believe that your technical analysis can be used in the short term and fundamentally in the long term. Do you somewhere support this view as well?
Yes. So basically what is technical analysis? Technical analysis is something whereby you use software for trading purpose. It is primarily for trading only. And fundamental analysis is for long-term purpose. Objective of fundamental analysis is to make wealth over a period of time. In case of technical analysis, it is based on short-term trading. Clear? So both are different subjects, but yes, you should have knowledge of either at least thoroughly to make a career in one of them. That is very much required, and it does work. So shall we call it a day? Hope I have been able to answer all your queries. And I like the session. One simple request was that there are few feedback forms. If you can just fill it and give it to me. See, the visiting cards are here. You can take anybody who wants.
Well, thank you, sir, for the insightful session about the capital market. I'm sure that this discussion on topics like markets, risk management, market volatility will help us in choosing our career path as well. And sir, on the behalf of IMT, I would like to present you with a memento.